You are a crab. Or maybe some sort of crab person if this mirror is to be believed. You awaken in a disgusting world. Are these your things? It's dark, grimy, and possibly dangerous. The nightmarish creatures here have something to say to you, but you don't speak the language. And it's worse than that. You have no idea what you're doing here. What do you do? This is the question Navicula Meatus asks the player. We're given absolutely nothing to go on, and I mean nothing. Let's back it up a little bit. Here's how the game opens up. How are you going to proceed? We are faced with what we might assume is the game's equivalent of a title screen, which immediately deconstructs any intuition we might have built up from our considerable gaming experience. We expect there to be a menu here, maybe with some options: new game, load game, words, text, language. These are the basic assumptions we have by default, but this game instantly challenges all of those preconceptions. We instead have to derive meaning through context. I have a mouse as a peripheral, and it moves this hand, so I must use it to click this thing, right? And so, our adventure begins. We're presented with what we know to be some sort of user interface, but it's one that is completely divorced from any visual language that we might be familiar with. If these are symbols or hieroglyphs or some way of communicating meaning, we're certainly not familiar with it. But from context alone, we'll probably quickly realize these are buttons. These might be some buttons as well, and this shape might be of some importance. Okay, let's try to establish some meaning by giving these buttons a press. And what do you know, they move us around, or rotate where we're facing, as we move on a grid like old dungeon crawlers. We've made enormous advancements in the past few seconds, leaping from a metaphysical infant to a toddler that can roam around their environment. Now, we can ask broader questions. What are we? Well, we have crab-like appendages that we see from our first-person view, and in the mirror we see something that must be us. Around the room we see normal human food objects, what appears to be a body or a corpse laying on a platform, and the broken shells of an egg. Did we emerge from the egg? Are we the soul of this body? Questions like this can't possibly be answered from this room or at our current physiological and psychological ability, so it's time to attempt to leave this box. And look at this, as we press our forehead against this door, right here, this part of our screen lights up. I believe this is a contextual action button. Hypothesis proved. We can now interact with our environment. Outside, we find ourselves in what I would describe as a hallway. We can't open all the doors, but if I open this one, we can enter a room with a creature in it. It doesn't appear to be hostile, so I attempt to communicate with it using our context button. Now, this large space in the center of our UI becomes useful and we see language. Yep, it's language alright, but it's not one that I understand. Okay, so language is a pretty huge concept that I don't think I'm going to be able to crack with context clues alone. There are a lot of symbols here, so we're going to have to vibe our way through this one. It looks like this creature gives us some sort of object as something briefly flashed on the screen, but I haven't found an inventory yet, so that's just a game theory for now. Turning around, this creature seems to be watching food in a microwave instead of a clearly functioning TV. These are objects from the real world, but that can't be where we are, right? Okay, on to the only other door we can open, and this is definitely an elevator, even though it doesn't really look like an elevator, because when I interact with this button, it plays something that is universally only heard in an elevator. Elevator music. Some things are constant. We now appear to be on the ground floor, and it's time to leave our cocoon and enter the real world. And look at that. It looks like some sort of society. That's definitely a trash bin, one of the hallmarks of an advanced nation. And there's a person inside. Okay, so maybe it's not a great society. In fact, wherever this is, it looks, it looks pretty terrible. This is a world of eternal darkness, barely and dimly lit by these, street lamp tentacle things. Everything is grimy. Unsure of what to do, I wander into what looks like a cathedral dedicated to some dark god. As I approach the altar, I talk to the painting. It screams in reply, and again seems to give me some sort of object, the purpose of which I couldn't hope to ascertain with context alone. Well, this might be a nightmare world, but at least the denizens seem friendly so far. Feeling courageous, I continue down a dark alley and encounter what I would describe as an inside-out cat. I'm beginning to wonder if this world is some cruel reflection of our own. Further down the alley, I begin to hear pounding music. I think this is some sort of back alley club. Whoa, baddie alert. There's an honest-to-God cat girl chilling in this hell world smoking a cigarette outside of a club. That Seems kinda out of place. The bouncer of this club, a Metroid-like creature, then gives me some sort of amulet. Or maybe an oyster? You know, actually, I'm starting to think these creatures aren't giving me anything, because in my experience, bouncers don't commonly give out goodie bags. So maybe he's asking for an ID or something, which in this world looks like that? Moving on, I enter another building. This is definitely a store. There's a few shelves of product and a cashier standing behind a counter. I move further on and enter another store. This time I attempt to buy a product by interacting with it, then interacting with the cashier. The store clerk flashes this symbol at me. I'm now convinced that my earlier assumption that these creatures were giving me something was wrong. Instead, this image they flash is asking for something. And I think this particular hieroglyph has to be money. And look here in the UI, we have that very symbol. It's at this moment when attempting to drag the money symbol from my inventory that I discover another element of the UI. If you click the upper right corner, this menu pops up. Delighted at the new discovery, I click a portion of this new menu and it immediately ends my adventure. Back at the main menu, but undeterred, I jump back in. And we seem to restart each time, ending up back in what I'm now going to describe as my apartment. After some experimentation with the newfound concept of a menu, I find that we have a full screen button that toggles full screen on or off, a return to main menu button, hitting the menu button while it's up seems to toggle off your UI, and finally we have a slider, with which you can turn your vision off if so desired. That's what I've always wanted in games that was sorely missing. The ability to turn off the graphics. Okay, so believe it or not, we mostly explored this town earlier, so I immediately set off to check the remaining points of interest. In this strange building, there seems to be a ferryman with a gondola floating in an interior river who asks for an icosahedron. This building seems to be some sort of art exhibit with various pieces hanging from the wall. This building doesn't provide any more context, but I'm completely convinced now that all the various townspeople so far have been asking for objects rather than gifting me things out of generosity. But how do I get these objects for people? I've seen that some of the requested items seem to be available for purchase, but how do I get money? Can I work a job somehow? Well, in the final remaining unexplored area, I would get my answer. In an area that seems to be an open-air park, there's a gargoyle asking for what looks like a bulb of garlic, as well as a fountain that seems to be dedicated to the human ear. Actually, wait, now that I see this ear, does the main menu kind of look like a diagram of the inner ear? I don't know what to think about that, but in the back of this park, there's a mushroom man who's about to change my life, because he actually does give me something. And you can tell because it goes to this little box on the UI and it's visible in my hand. Overjoyed, I go interact with the fountain to celebrate and get yet another item. Okay, so now I'm operating under the assumption that I'm at the beginning of a trade quest like Majora's Mask. I correctly remember that the inside-out cat seemed to want one of the objects that I now have, so I trade the cat for some oblong potato-looking stone. By the way, now that we have 2 items, we can press this little button to cycle through our inventory items. Anyway, I'll save you some time here, but I can't figure out the next part of the trade quest. Eventually, out of desperation, I end up interacting with the fountain again and get this strange beehive-type object. With whatever this object is, we can head back up to our neighbor's apartment, and if you're looking carefully, this time you'll notice that our neighbor has a symbol for money painted on the door. And if we hand this beehive over, boom. In this world, we count money on our fingers. 1 money. 2 money. Okay, so I know how money works, so I'm gonna go to the store, I'm gonna buy this piece of coral, and I'm gonna trade it to this guy, which gives us access to this seedy-looking bar. We have now progressed from infant to working class man grabbing a cheeky pint after work. Okay, so next, I trade an eggplant I got at the bar to this thing in the church for the magic conch from SpongeBob. And on the way out, I see that a door that was once blocked by rubble is now open. Upon exploring the interior, I see a bunch of schizo drawings on a whiteboard. Dustbin, ear, 4-eyed neighbor creature. There's a deeper plot here that I have yet to decipher. There's also a corpse of someone playing this very game, as well as another whiteboard with yet more esoteric ramblings to ponder. There's a lot going on here and I don't know what to make of it at this point. Okay, continuing with the quest, I fish more stuff out of the fountain. At this point, I have a growing suspicion I'm fetching antique coins out of a water fountain and exchanging them for real cash with my neighbor. I guess that's just my job here in, well, wherever this is. More money. Buy the garlic. Give the garlic to the gargoyle. Receive an indescribable object in return. He then asks for coral. Buy the coral. Give the gargoyle the coral. He gives me an avocado half. Take the avocado half to the painting in the Chapel of Darkness. The painting gives me the oyster. Take the oyster to the bouncer at the rave and descend into madness. Amidst this confusing cacophony, I found 2 shrimp who appear to want to strike a deal. More fetch quests. I bring the shrimp what they desire, and they give me the icosahedron in exchange. I know where this goes. I have to exchange this to Karen for Ride on the River Styx, right? Because this has to be hell, right? Alright, let's see where this goes. Okay, so after that sequence, I know this is a good game. After the magical ride, I find myself in a peaceful hedge maze, far removed from the hustle and bustle of city life. At the center of the maze, I see a sculpture that looks incredibly familiar. Peaceful rain falls and the camera zooms, drawing attention to whatever this is. That seems to be the end of this, so I turn around only to see my path blocked by a creature. A hostile creature. It strikes me down and I perish, returning to the main menu where I see none other than the organic-looking twin of the sculpture. The sculpture was the main menu. Of course! I click the tiny tail end and I'm met with this. A series of 25 buttons. Entering a sequence and then pressing the button will translate between the runes and the English alphabet, minus the letter Z. It would seem that this game has much more to offer. There are many more secrets to discover. So, I prepare myself mentally to take screenshots of every dialogue in the game and manually translate them. But then I remembered, on the Steam page, I swear I saw something in plain English. And yes, here in the Steam trailer, I see a being conversing in plain English. So at this point, I'm thinking this is like an ARG, and there's some secret setting in the menu that's going to put the game in English. Since we just learned a trick to manipulate the menu in a way that was presumably available to us at the very start, why couldn't there be another, deeper trick to switch the language to English? So I decide to visit the developer's website for more information, which is usually the starting trick in these ARG type situations. This is, of course, an indie game developed and published by someone who goes by Torgomind. As soon as I click on the website, I can tell that indeed, Torgomind wanted me to find this. The site is stylized to look like an early internet site, like late 90s or early 2000s, and it has these fake banner ads. But a lot of work was put into them. There's a lot of them. If you refresh the page, you can repopulate it with new ones. And I say they're fake because they all link to one site, Torgomind Solutions. This seems to be a recruitment page for a fictional company. I can join the Torgomind team. The site states, our new entry-level package includes generous opportunities that are awarded to those who meet company goals, such as our discount rate parking zones and our biannual fundraiser and paintball event. But uh-oh, what's this fine print at the bottom? Terms and conditions. By accessing, visiting, or interacting with this digital property in any capacity, you irrevocably and unconditionally agree to the following terms and conditions and stipulations as set forth by Torgomind Luminous Procrustic Solutions, TLPS, hereafter referred to as the Corporation. By accessing this site, you forfeit any claim to personal autonomy, including but not limited to the ownership of your personal identity, thoughts, ideas, and any subsequent creations. Whew! These terms and conditions are getting crazy. Unfortunately, I can't find any leads on this website. I'm not really good at these things anyway, so I resign myself to having to translate for now. And after I grabbed a bunch of screenshots and prepared myself mentally to manually translate the rest of this game, which I might remind you is extremely blurry, I happened to discover this. When you hit the translate button, the background of the main menu goes from chaotic sludge to a nice, calmer looking ocean background. And if you click on the main menu when this background is up, the game will start in English. Okay, now we're cooking with gas. All of this game's secrets are about to be discovered, right? So, first thing I discover is that our piggy bank neighbor is an ancient one, and the things we were trading were either newspapers or ancient coins. So, I was pretty much right. Okay, the bin people say scram, you cretin. But it seems that new creatures have appeared. Something's different. Directly across from my apartment is this blob of flesh that says, man as it's consumed by an environment was a decaying organic structures. I don't know what to make of that. But the clerks say super normal stuff like select an item and no money, no business. This isn't a hell world after all. The people here are mostly normal and they say normal stuff. And that weird meat sphere is like your typical rambling homeless guy. Driving them to the events unfold. Night ritual of eyes through a woman who witnesses the way. Collective grotesque experience. Post-apocalyptic is that feeds on the land. It kind of reminds me of Hylics 1 with the randomly generated text of the random NPCs, where it makes just enough sense that your mind will attempt to see a pattern in the static, but there's nothing really there. You're just hallucinating the meaning. Just like you're hallucinating this video. Okay, so moving on, Karen is looking for a ticket. I guess that icosahedron is a ticket in this world, but I'll save you some time. This game doesn't seem beatable in English. I even restarted several times, and it seems like for whatever reason, in this mode, the various denizens will not give you the proper trades to get the ticket. So I can't go to the hedge maze and confront that thing that killed me in English. I can't even get into the club to find out what the shrimp were saying. However, I can find out that the 3 items in the shop were Sprite, burger, and fries. There is no way I would have guessed that in a million years, so there you go. But there's no way the game just ends here, so I start racking my brain. Okay, there's a single piece of written text that's not a dialogue in this game, and it's written beneath one of the art pieces next to Karen. I take a screenshot of the characters and painstakingly transcribe them into the generator and get bullet. The menu glows blue. And I spawn inside the ferryway. It looks like we do hatch from an egg. But now I'm locked in and the only option is to ride the ferry. Once again, a 10 out of 10 experience. This time I arrive in a very normal looking building with some very not normal looking people hiding in the alley. Inside the building is a butcher shop, but like a Nightmare World version of a butcher shop. There's a counter where we can acquire meat from a clerk, for free, mind you. A back room with freezers for the various types of meat, yes, including human, and a large guy who seems to enjoy blocking our way forward. At this point I was thinking, is this why it's called Navicula Meatus? Navicula is Latin for a small boat, and meatus, well, we can pretend it's a bastardization for meat. A small boat that takes us to a meat shop? Is this what the game is all about? Now, as I struggle with this puzzle, let me explain. The butcher will hand you a piece of meat, which you are to examine with a penetrative X-ray. It will then display a shape which corresponds to one of the many creatures. You're supposed to find 3 parts from the same creature, any creature, that doesn't matter, and assemble it in the sausage machine. Now, you'll see me completely vibe check this puzzle and do it by accident, but when I replayed this game later, I actually got stuck here for like an hour because I didn't even realize it was a puzzle. Once you've made the acceptable sausage, you simply feed it to this guy who explodes and lets you pass. A metal grate closes down behind me, so I've got no way but forward now. And I find a glyph that looks like our translation keyboard, and ascend the stairs to meet 4 guardians. Now, I'm ashamed of how long this took me, but what you're supposed to do is take all of the shields from the guardians, then place them in the corresponding place on the giant keyboard you just walked over. Now, I don't know why this took me a while, but I got stuck thinking I was supposed to rearrange the shields to form a word or something. Anyway, upon solving the puzzle, the doors open, allowing me into a new section of the map with several houses or buildings. I follow the path that seems to be indicated and arrive at a house that looks like, well, a house. There's a phone and a bookshelf and normal stuff. Also, this treasure chest, which gives a scroll with a palindrome. I turn from the scroll, and outside the house there's a woman, like a normal woman. I walk to approach her, but I'm met with a camera flash that seems to simultaneously kill me and revert me back into a human form. Instead of crab claws, I see my hands flash before my eyes. As, well, the last thing I see. Okay, I know what to do now. That palindrome is definitely a code. Putting it in, I spawn. Not hatching like a crab, but as a human. There's no more corpse on the table. I have regained my form. But everything's different. It's real. Our neighbor was just an old woman. Sadly, it seems like she's passed away, but she was no longer watching the microwave food rotate, but a TV like a normal old woman would. The layers are being peeled off. I'm excited to go meet all the denizens of towns like the humans they presumably are, so I hop on the elevator. But it doesn't stop. It descends deeper and deeper and deeper. I'm now in a subterranean maze, and I find a creature from the old world that tells me patterns forming grotesque flora, possibly the group's darkest practices, casting a collective form. I don't know what this means. Wandering further leads me into a crystal grotto. I can move forward here, but there appears to be caverns on each side that are calling to me. I find yet more denizens of the caves, and they all have something cryptic to say to me. I'm no more capable of deciphering them now than I was 5 minutes ago, so I press on. Then, I bump into the creature that killed me, back when I was a crab in the hedge maze. Deeper still in the tunnels, I seem to find my method of retribution, a sword. I pick it up, but sadly it does not satisfy my craving for revenge. The game won't let me strike down my murderer. I decide to press ahead, leaving the crystal cave and bump into his twin? Maybe it's the same guy? I don't know. This time, however, I do get my revenge. In a bizarre turn of events, I now seem to be in a factory deep underground. There are conveyor belts of meat and blood, and in the center, behind shrink-wrapped cardboard boxes, is what looks like a graphical glitch. I don't know what to make of any of this. I slay many more of whatever that was and move my way towards the center of the factory. Finally, culminating in this. Knee stalks. Undulating crest along the appetizer still moving. Submerged ganglia. I probably have to censor this because of YouTube. And that's it. Or at least everything that I could figure out. Undoubtedly, this game has more secrets, and I invite you to find them for yourself. I tried stuff like typing Whirlpool or knee stocks into the code machine since that seemed kinda weird, but nothing I tried worked. What did any of that mean? And what was up with the cat girl? I don't know. And you know what? That's okay. I'm not sure we're meant to understand everything about this game exactly. Who was the woman at the end? I don't know. Maybe she was the concept of the divine, embracing us in our reclaimed primordial form. Maybe Navicula Meatus wasn't the gondola that moved us on the river Styx. Maybe our body is the vessel, a meat canoe that our soul uses to travel the waters of consciousness. Anyway, 10 out of 10 game. Can't wait to play the next game from Torgo Mind, since I'm apparently contractually obligated anyway. I'm the Doom Prophet. I realize I didn't introduce myself, but if you like this video, like and subscribe for the next one, where I'm sure we'll play more weird stuff. Peace.